Ladies and gentlemen, damas y caballeros, thank you for joining us for yet another episode of All the Angles, the Business of Padel podcast worldwide, powered by the Hexagon Cup. This week, our objective is to give you, our audience, a unique insight into the padel ecosystem in the Middle East. I'm joined for this episode by my guest host, again, Ben Nichols, who is the international comms lead at the high-profile and groundbreaking padel teams event, the Hexagon Cup. And we're fortunate enough to explore this area with both Anouar and Najwa, who join us from the region. Anouar is the CEO of Just Padel from Dubai, and Najwa Salhab is the player at the Saudi national team and is also sponsored by one of the biggest clubs in the country, Padel Rush. So I'm delighted that we've been able to have them both join us for this conversation. Before we get started, if you enjoy this episode or have benefited from previous ones, please share, like, subscribe. It really does help us. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, I want to talk about how padel was embraced by the region. And I guess from my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, the first courts really started appearing in the Middle East in 2013 in Dubai when the Crown Prince of Dubai, Sheikh Hamdan, ordered 2 courts for his Nas sports complex. And that's 10 years ago, plus or minus. How important for the growth of padel was that event? And what is the engine of the growth once those courts come in 2013? Maybe we can start with you, Anouar, because it's in your backyard in Dubai.
I think definitely that promotion that has been given from Our Highness Sheikh Hamdan helped. I would say in 2013 it was still quiet, so it was just a very small community playing padel. People that I would say used to travel more into Europe, mostly into Spain, because even in Europe at that time it was mainly played by Spanish people. I think as well in Argentina, but I don't have the memory that these sports used to be played in France or in Italy or in UK or Scandinavian country. So I think definitely it put the padel into the map of the Middle East, and year after year the Padel Federation started to be implemented, I think in 2015. But I would say the big push of the padel tennis in the region is COVID. Really, COVID created a massive boom in 2020. That's where really most of the clubs could see an opportunity into padel. I think professional players, different celebrities like David Beckham. Now, of course, we have Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, but other celebrities play padel tennis. So that generates a natural marketing promotion, and definitely it will keep growing the sports. I think now the Padel Premier being involved and developing something similar than what you can find in tennis makes the sport much more visible, and I think it will give us a beautiful next 10, 20, 30 years ahead with the massive growth of this sport.
So, a question to both of you. How did padel look in your respective countries before COVID? You mentioned it was quite a small community. Was it mainly for rich people? Was it quite exclusive, quite difficult to access? How would you describe it before COVID? And then obviously we can then describe how it changed post-COVID. Maybe, Najwa, you can give us the perspective from Saudi.
Yes, for sure. I think building on what Anwar said, there was a lack of awareness about paddle. People in the region didn't even, or in the country in Saudi, didn't even know that such a sport existed. And then during COVID, there were more courts that were being built. And when people started playing the game, the fact that it's so easy to start playing it, the fact that it's fun and that it's social, really created that boom. So I think the fact that you went from low demand to high demand, it's because there was no awareness about the sports. So as soon as people discovered this new sport, it was like it opened up a whole new market. And so we see this between 2021, let's say, and today, there was 46 courts or 50 courts in 2021, and today there is more than 1,000 courts, which you see that increase in.
Is there a reason that um, that paddle benefited from COVID more than, for example, other sports? I mean, there are, whether it's five-a-side football or surfing or paddleboard on the water, like there's other things that in theory people could do during COVID. COVID obviously massively restricted what you could do, especially where you were in contact with other people or you were indoors. But what was it about paddle that kind of grabbed the imagination during those COVID months and years?
I think it is the fact that paddle had that social aspect. So people really enjoyed it. And it's easy to play. So if you're a beginner and you never touched a racket or you never played sports, when you go to paddle and you start playing paddle, you feel like you can play the sports. You feel like it's easily accessible. And also it gives you that social aspect. So the combination of the fact that it's a sport that is relatively easy to enter into and the fact that it's also a social sport made it really a high demand sport. So I think it has an interesting combination.
And was that your experience as well? Sorry,
Yeah, I
Ben.
think the social aspects definitely it's
Sorry.
something that attracted a lot of people. That curiosity of the sports, the easy learning as well, the networking. I think lots of people make business through paddle. It's really you can play with someone that is 60 with someone that is 40 years old. So I think it can really attract different category of people, different group age, and you have also different type of people that wants to be competitive, people that just want to have that social aspects. So it really I would say targets different type of people.
So I'm interested to delve a little bit into the type of people playing paddle in both your respective countries. So I used to live in Dubai, Anouar, in 2008 to 2010. So I'm very familiar. I've been back many times since. It's changed a lot, and obviously that time I was there predates kind of paddle even existing. What would you say in the Dubai or the UAE as a whole are kind of your typical paddle players? Are we seeing expats and locals? Are we seeing young and old? Are we seeing what's if you were to describe a paddle player, what would you be saying?
I think in 2013 and up to let's say 2020, it was mostly played by I would say a Spanish community and also by a group of local people. After 2020, I think lots of local people really start playing massively. But the group age was mostly from I would say 18 years old onwards, with a big portion of 40 years old to 60 years old. So that was really I think where people could see really a new sport to their lifestyle. Today, I can definitely see a mix of people. You can have lots of Indians playing padel. There is also a Filipino community because the sport is becoming much more attractive in terms of pricing. In 2020 up to I would say end of 2021, the prices were still high, but now the fact that you have a massive offer in the market, the demand is still growing, but the outdoor court, for example, in some locations are quite cheap. So it gives the opportunity to everyone to play. Now, what we're looking for is to definitely democratize the sport into schools to attract the youth. And we can see over the last, I would say, 6 to 12 months where there is an interest about the children starting from 9 years old up to 16 years old. And that's, I think, where the sport will definitely jump to a different matrix when the youth will be involved into that sport.
It's interesting. So you think that's the next phase? Because some would say, whilst it's growing in so many countries, paddle, some are using kind of the UAE as an example. Maybe it's plateauing a bit, but actually the new energy, I suppose, you want to use is getting it into the schools and universities, right? Yeah. Najwa, perspective on that in Saudi in terms of the type of people playing paddle. What are you witnessing?
I think mostly they're locals. So there is a big interest from the local community. You see a lot of Saudis that are playing paddle, and I would say the age group is between, let's say, 25 and 40. And there is an addiction to or an obsession with the sports where you see a lot of people playing. And interestingly, there is also a big female community compared to other sports. You see a higher percentage of women playing paddle, which is also interesting to see. Um, and in terms of, let's say, the appetite for the sports or the interest in the sports, it's interesting to see, for example, if you compare Saudi to other countries, what's interesting to see in Saudi is that there are different peak hours in terms of how people play. So I don't know if you're familiar with Saudi, and I don't know if it's similar to Dubai or not, but a lot of people play at odd timings. So you see peak hours even very late into the evening. Like they can play until 2 to 3 a.m., which is very interesting, I think, to see this compared to the rest of the world. I think it's an advantage for Saudi because they have much more hour where we consider it peak hours. So it's very interesting for the demand. locally and also for clubs.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to Padel Rush a few weeks ago when I was in Riyadh for the Esports World Cup, and they've got obviously about 4, I think, indoor courts and a bunch outdoors. I was there after this awards ceremony, so it was like 11 midnight, and the courts were full. And they were saying this is peak for outdoor. This is peak. So to your point, Najwa, you've got the traditional peak hours indoors, which is when people finish work and they want to go, or in the morning, but it's still hot, so they prefer to play indoors. And then when it gets cooler outdoors, then you have the second peak session, which is the outdoor peak session, which goes deep into the night. I think I saw a lot of people playing football at 1 or 2 in the morning as well, because that's the peak time for football, because it's the coolest time to play outdoors. So the business model is much more stretched for you guys, where you can capture more peak hours than your traditional UK model or European model.
Exactly, and that's where you attract the locals even more, because they want to have that flexibility to be able to play at different timings.
And I think I really want to delve into what you both mentioned, the opportunity with the kids and the opportunity with the women's players. So, Najwa, just on the women's players, do you get a sense that in Saudi Arabia, and maybe it's the same in UAE, Anwar, that the women, as they start to kind of take part in more social activities, they're obviously looking for things that they feel more comfortable accessing. And there are some sports which maybe feel more accessible than others. Do you get the sense that paddle has naturally become that front line of when women go, I want to socialize, I want to go out in public, I want to have fun? Actually, I think paddle is what I would prefer to do than maybe other activities. Is it one of the first thoughts that women have? And that's why you're seeing so many more women participating in paddle than perhaps in other sports?
I think so. I think because there's a community element that you see in lots of clubs in Saudi, which women like. They like to join clubs where they feel that there's that community aspect, and also lots of paddle clubs locally offer private courts, so courts where women only. And the fact that they do that attracts even more women. So they know what these women are looking for. They're looking for that community aspect, and some of them are looking for that privacy aspect, and they're able to offer both, which I think is really
Yes,
good to keep and to attract
I'm
more.
assuming most
Yes.
sports can't do that, right? Or most activities can't do that.
No.
So it immediately puts them in a tier
Mm,
of attractiveness for the female athletes or
yeah.
participants. Is that the same in your experience, Anwar? Is the female pickup higher than most other sports?
I'll give you our experience in Dubai. We have dedicated some courts for women. And when we started in 2021, we decided to dedicate 4 courts in Mina Rashid. We used to have 16 courts, 4 courts for ladies, 4 outdoor court, and 8 indoor mixed court. That was from 2021 up to July 2024. But we realized that the women in Dubai, it's a market that is mostly dedicated for private coaching sessions. That's from our experience, and doesn't mean that it's the market, but we have a lot of demand for the private coaching sessions. But organizing social games, because usually women starting at 6-7 o'clock in the evening, they don't really play between 4 women, or they mix it with men, and you have a lots of women playing with men, or they just take private sessions. So for us, dedicating 4 courts for only women did not work. So we decided to convert those courts into a tennis indoor court, which is much more interesting for us in terms of business. In ladies club, which is completely dedicated for ladies, it was the same feeling. We thought that really with 1,800 members there, it will really have an appetite for padel in terms of socialized game or tournament, but it was quite difficult. So we still have the core there, but it's mostly for private coaching sessions.
Let's move on to the professional side of the sport as well, which I think is really interesting as a reflection of how advanced it is, in terms of popularity in the Middle East. We're seeing a lot of tournaments, particularly Premier Padel, come to obviously Riyadh and Doha, Dubai, Kuwait. There's many, and I'm sure will be many more. Would you say people are enjoying kind of going to witness those events and see it in person? Or is it you very much kind of both see it as a recreational, playing sport, and that's sort of, that's for a different audience? What would you say
Yes, 100%. So we had the first Premier Padel tournament happening in Riyadh in the beginning of this year, and we saw a big attendance there. And actually, it happened at Padel Rush, our club, and you could see the interaction between the fans and the players. So we were walking between the players, and you could feel that enthusiasm to interact with the players and to watch different players. And as we went through to the finals, for example, you saw that there was much more attendance and even more following after that tournament. So it raised again the awareness of paddle, and you saw more players coming after the premier paddle that happened in Paddle Rush. So definitely the fact that more tournaments are happening in the region is increasing that awareness. So it's increasing people wanting to play paddle.
For us, I think it was 2022, the World Cup has been organized in Dubai, and they do that in Dubai duty free. So the stadium, there is like 5,600 seats. It was full. So definitely you can see that the paddle is really changing into a good level competition. I do believe that in Dubai, the level of players with different type of level, we call it from D level up to A level, you can see that people they take it seriously, and you can see lots of professional players love to come to Dubai for multiple reasons. And you have the Padel Premier happening in end of October, beginning of November. So definitely it's a destination for Padel. I think also the quality of the venues in Dubai is one of the best in the world. You have really some places with all the amenities that you can find in a club, and not only from one, you have multiple clubs like that. So the number of courts in Dubai is I think more than 500 to 600 courts. So yes, we have a high offer, but the demand is going there. And as I mentioned, you have different type of population. For example, Indian and Pakistanis that are really involved into paddle more and more. So definitely the market will keep grow. The quality of the players will keep grow. The way of the UAE Federation is making it professional and investing a lot into the youth will definitely build the right seeds to grow talent and future champions.
I just want to add one more point building on that. If you look at the type of players that used to play paddle, most of the players that started playing paddle in the past had a tennis background. So they came from tennis. So they were either ex semi professional tennis players that just shifted to paddle, or players that used to play tennis and shifted to paddle. But now we see lots of new players that are entering the paddle scene that have no racket sport background. So also this is showing the interest in paddle even more. You don't have to be a tennis player or have a racket background to now enter the sports and actually compete and be a good player in paddle, which is also interesting to see.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the potential of the
Mm,
sport, and how far it can go. I
mm,
just want to pick up on something you said, Anouar, in terms of the federation, because we just had in the UK the Federation for Paddle here, which is the LTA, the Tennis Federation, has put out its own kind of map, blueprint for the sport in the years ahead. What would you say is the kind of involvement you have with the federation at the national level in the UAE, if any? And being candid, how much support do you get? How much more would you like? What's your view of what you see?
I mean, I think everyone always want to have support from this federation. Our federation is definitely there to support the clubs and give them a certain visibility, organizing tournaments, making sure that they are really fair with different clubs. But you see, at the end of the day, every clubs run that as a business. So you have to make sure that you create your own communities, making sure that you provide the right services to the client. But the good point is I would say the federation is not an obstacle for the growth of the padel, which is already something important. I think in Europe, the big challenge is the obstacles of the tennis federation versus the padel, because they understand that you have a number of members into tennis. They don't want to get that diluted for pickleball, padel, badminton, or any kind of racket sports. But they can realize that today it's padel. I think padel will help the tennis to keep being as it is, because as Najwa mentioned, you have a lot of people that used to play tennis and shifted into padel and enjoy the padel. They really, I mean, they love it. They tell you in the beginning, oh, they're a bit careful. No, it's not really the sports I want to play. But when they are into it, finish, done, halas, they are into it. But that's
mm.
the reality, really, finish. And they see, I have a friend, and even me, I used to play tennis just with a friend. And I say, what's this sports padel? You play, it's too slow, you don't burn calories, I don't feel. But at the end of the day, when you play padel, when you do 4 sets, you burn 2,000 calories. You will not burn like that in tennis, or even if you go to the gym, you will burn 800 calories and you will feel like you're dead. But with padel, you will burn 2,000 calories and you will want to play another 4 sets,
Najwa, would you say paddle can help tennis? What do you think of that, and what's your view on the federation as a whole?
I think, like what Anouar mentioned, the federation is there to promote the sport and to bring in tournaments. So they are there to support in terms of the fact that they're doing tournaments does raise the awareness, and you see an increase in participation also. In every tournament that they host, there's more and more players that are playing. So it is important to host those tournaments because it makes the whole scene more competitive, and people want to. The fact that there are tournaments, more players want to train more, to compete more. So, for example, if tournaments weren't happening, less players would invest in the sport. So, the fact that I have a tournament coming up, I would take more coaching sessions, I would take paddle more seriously. So, this is very important to support the community also and for people to increase their skills. So, definitely, it's very important.
So the Middle East, we obviously started talking about how it's important that it's so social and that the community around it is critical. But what you're saying actually for both of you is that the competitive structure, the amateur competitive structure is really important as well and is thriving. I think, Najwa, you mentioned that even the Premier Padel inspires people not just to take up the sport, but to compete in the sport and to try and get better. So do you feel like it's fair to say that the competitive offering for amateurs is both healthy and important in your respective countries?
Me, I will say no, to be honest, because the business spoiled the sports. And unfortunately, when you organize a tournament in Dubai, I'm sure in Saudi Arabia is the same, there is a lot of prize money. And we are part as well. I'm not blaming the others because we are part of that blame as well. So I think that spoiled the game. So you will have people that will come playing tournaments only for the cash prize money. And I don't think this is the value of really sports, because this is a so noble and nice sports that I would say the dynamic in the Middle East to attract customers and building communities has to be done through different values. But for that, I would say that's where maybe the federation should come with the process to respect and the regulation. And as it's not there, so it's like Wild Wild West. I think that's the main challenge. Also, the ranking players is a challenge. So the fact that you don't have a proper ranking players, so you will come play in a tournament, fake that you a low category level, and then when you reach semi-final and final, you will start playing well to win the prize, but you spoil the whole tournament because you will get disqualified, and at the end of the day, you will just ruin the event because people got upset. So the ranking has to be done properly.
So Anouar, you're a purist who doesn't like mercenaries coming in, and you feel that there needs to be, if there is competition, it needs to be a bit better regulated.
Yeah. I think so. We're organizing one of the biggest, if not the biggest, tournament during Ramadan. It's called the JP Open. We have last year we had 317 teams participating to different categories over 3 weeks. The cash prize was 100,000 dirhams, split it into different categories. This is the only event where we're doing that to really bring something to people, to value the players. But during the year, I think there are multiple tournaments that are organized in different clubs, including us. That could be without cash prize. But clubs today, the fact that the real estate is so expensive, and I'm sure in UK you have the same, that people find different way to attract and to build communities to pay the bills. If you have a support and if there is sponsors that can really, and I think it's coming more and more actually, supporting the activity and supporting the clubs, that's where we can really build something sustainable for everyone, and not having people that are just driven by the passion where they will spend all their savings believing that their passion can making them multimillionaire. But at the end, it's not that. You want to have a sustainable business model. And the sustainable business model help the community to keep growing. You will help the quality of the services you can provide to the players. You will build really professional players. And that's what really we're trying to do at Just Padel. But also many clubs does that. It's not just the recreational part of it. It's also having the recreational to create volume, to be able then to select the one that you can really build a future for them.
Najwa, what's your take on competitive structures in Saudi Arabia?
I see Anwar's point, but I actually think competition is very healthy for the community and for the sports because, like I mentioned, the fact that you know that there's a competition happening, you'll take the sports more seriously and you'd want to practice more and train more, and it increases the level. Maybe Dubai is different than Saudi, and in Saudi, we started at a much lower level. And the fact that they introduced tournaments and competition locally, you see everyone investing in themselves to become better. So it raised the level of all paddle players. If you compare paddle players 2 years ago to today, thanks to the tournaments that are happening, the competitions that are happening, it feels like it's a whole other game. So for me, I saw it as a positive, having that healthy competition. It really built up the
I see
community.
that as well as a healthy competition. My point was more everyone is organizing tournaments in Dubai. You have maybe 10, 15, 20 tournaments per week. It's the cash prize money that creates a different type of competition. But of course, the tournament, we have Kings of the Court, we have Americano. There is so many tournaments in Dubai over the week where you can participate. And that, as you mentioned, Najwa, perfectly, definitely that improved the level of the players, and that's where the healthy competition is. It's just it's a racing now between clubs of who will offer higher amount than the others, and that's why it's unhealthy in my point.
That's true. It became a business also. The tournament part became a business. So it's true what you're saying now. They're competing also on prize money to attract higher caliber players also. So that's when you see
Yeah,
players coming from abroad also to
yeah.
compete in these local tournaments.
And you talk about development. I wanted to take a point about academies and coaching. It's something that we often neglect when we talk about paddle in different areas, but it sounds to me like there is a real opportunity for academies to help fuel the development and improvement of course, the coaches themselves, but as a result, the players. How do you see the coaching infrastructure in the Middle East, and how is it developing?
So I think again it improved. I'll have to start from let's say 2020 versus where we are today because it became much more mature today than where it was 2021 or in 2020. You had a very few number of coaches when really the market started to boom. So people they started to charge ridiculous amount of money for private coaching sessions. There were not really an academy built out of it. When we saw academy, it's like in football. You have a youth academy with a different category with a certain number of people participating to that group coaching sessions. In Dubai, it's mostly private coaching sessions. So doing that as an academy, it's not really an academy. It's more people come, they want to sweat, they want to improve, they want just to take it part of the lifestyle, and they come and they do coaching sessions with the coaches mostly coming from Argentina, Spain. That's are usually the coach that we have here. I think when they arrive, in my opinion, those people, the coaches, they could do whatever they want because there is no really reference in terms of quality program. But today now people they are much more careful on the way they're spending their money because you know that a coaching sessions it's not cheap. It's quite expensive to be honest. But from there now people they want to see results. They don't want just to come, sweat and go home. They really want to get better with the bandeja, with the vibora. They want to understand the glasses. They want to really know if okay I take 30 sessions over a period of 6 months, how I will improve my level. Can I start playing tournaments? What kind of player I am? Do I play on the right side or on the left side? So if a coach doesn't know how to speak properly English or sharing the right information to the player, definitely the club will be impacted. And the problem is reaching the comfort zone because lots of people come in Dubai, you're excited, you work hard, and then after that, you enter to your comfort zone and you become friends with the client, and the level of quality is going down. So that's why I think the head coach and the manager of the club a very important role to always have a look and an eye on the game, on the coaching level, and himself needs to understand the game because if you don't understand it, how can you really evaluate it? Then after it's a relation, of course, with the coach. We have an amazing team at Just Padel with coaches coming from Argentina. They really taking care of the program. They created a community per level of players, so they're creating also game between them. They watching. The watching is very important. How to adjust the way of holding the racket. So that's really part of the coaching, and that's really what I see. Today we have one of our member that she's part of the national team. She started from scratch 2 years ago. I'm sure like Najwa, and she's so dedicated, and now she's one of the pillar of the national team. So definitely, as a club, we are extremely proud of it, and we will help her to really reach different level, because I do believe the UAE or even the Saudi Arabia level, with the quality of the clubs, with the passion for the sports, and the dedication that they putting in, can really reach in the next 8 to 12 years something close to what you can find in Europe. When I say Europe, I would say Spain. They are far from the level of the rest of the countries. But I do believe France, Italy, and also Dutch, Netherlands, England is becoming into the market. And Egypt, I think those countries, they will really catch back very fast the level of those countries.
Najwa, what's your take on the coaching and academy infrastructure in Saudi Arabia?
So when paddle first started, not many of the clubs had coaches. And then as the demand picked up for paddle, you'd see more players going and taking coaching sessions. And now players judge more harshly the coaches. So it's very important for them to see, like what Anwar mentioned, to see an improvement, let's say, in specific shots, or they would change coaches. So it's very important to attract high quality coaches, and most of them come from Spain and Saudi. So most of the coaches that we see in the different academies are all Spanish. And also we see an increase in female coaches. For example, the first coaches that came to Saudi that were women only happened 1 year ago. So when coaching started in Saudi, it was mostly also male dominated, and now we see more female coaches to attract that female clientele. And definitely having higher quality coaches is very important, which is like what Anwar said, it's important to set that standard, to know what makes a good coach, or to differentiate a good coach from a bad coach, which I think it's still difficult to differentiate. People don't really know what makes a good coach or what makes a bad coach. If we hear that there's a coach that comes from Spain, we automatically think that they're good coaches, but we really don't know. There's no standardization in terms of what makes you a good coach or what makes you a bad coach. So I don't know if that will start to change, and maybe they will set regulations or standardize the coaching or have different coaching methods. I'm not sure what will happen there, but I definitely see a change happening.
Looking to the future of the sport, obviously the future relies really on young people getting involved, kids getting involved. And what would you say is being done or needs to be done to grow the number of kids playing in the UAE and in Saudi? Let's start on that. Najwa, why don't you start, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so I think it's very important to start in schools, which I think that there are already initiatives to push paddle, to add it into school curriculums, for example, to again start them very young. And even in different clubs, you see a lot of youth programs, or you see a lot of, even starting at the age of 6, a lot of sessions, group sessions dedicated just for kids, which is very important to have those sessions for children.
And what would you say? Any kind of other insights as to how we can get kids involved?
I think the youth paddle development is what is the main key for the next 10 to 15 years. And as Najwa mentioned, it's definitely starting from the schools. The schools, I would say, over the last 2 years, they were a bit reticent to start involving the paddles into the after-school activities, because that's how it goes through the ECS. But it's not because of them. It depends also on the infrastructures. You don't have that many paddle courts in schools, but now you have more and more. So our growth development was mostly into schools. So we built paddle courts into schools, having an interesting commercial agreement for the school and also for the students and for our club. But I think when it started into the after-school activities, when the academy side of the paddle for youth started really to reach between 60 to 100 children per year, that's where really the paddle will start growing. Because today, it's still very low numbers, but I would say from 2 years ago to last year, we could see a massive growth. And now we have schools that want to come into our clubs to do school trips. So the school trips helps. You have also now we have 75 children coming to our venue in Mina Rashid for 16 weeks. So they develop now the program where our coaches train them, and that's how I think it will start developing the activity. But it's not just in the Middle East. I think it's everywhere in the world. If you go in France, UK, all the Scandinavian country, the youth paddle is still not developed because there is no proper marketing done to it. So and it's all about the sponsors. It's all about the investment that the federation wants to put in Europe or even in the Middle East. The UAE Padel Federation, they have definitely the objective to develop the youth, and they're investing a lot into that. But it takes time. You put a seed, it has to grow slowly, and you need to really take care of it. So that's really where we are, in my belief, with the youth padel.
And we've talked about the role of the royalty picking it up. We talked about the role of COVID accelerating the growth and how Premier Paddle events are making a difference. Let's talk about the Olympics for a second. There's obviously a big movement to have paddle join the Olympic roster by 2032 at the earliest. Would that make a big difference within your respective countries if it became an Olympic sport? Or do you think actually the sport can do quite well without that extra element? Your take
For
on
me,
the
I think
on Olympic inclusion?
it will definitely an added value to be part of the Olympic Games. I think it will be a recognition of the sports being part of the Olympic Games. You have some sports that doesn't have the same visibility than the paddle day, but they are part of the Olympic Games. Would it really help paddle tennis to reach a different dimension? I doubt. The marketing is done already. All the celebrities done the marketing. It's everything on Instagram today. And the Instagram, when you have a photo by Cristiano Ronaldo playing in Padel Rush, that makes a huge difference. It's 560 million people that will see that. So automatically you will create an appetite for the sport. You will create also a vibe and excitement for the other football players. Lots of football players play padel. You have a Klopp. He stopped Liverpool, and he said during 3 months I will only focus my career into padel. So imagine that. All those people that are retired. You have Luis Figo, you have Puyol, you can name it. They all come to Dubai, or they go to different places, and they enjoy that sport. So they're investing into that as well. You have lots of football players that investing into paddle. So I think the investment will definitely keep growing. I do believe the US market is the next key market. I do believe Russian market is also a market. I do believe UK, but UK needs to be tweaked a bit. But when it penetrates properly the market, definitely it will really becoming worldwide.
And Najwa, from your perspective, the Olympics, is it a game changer or not really?
I think, like what Anwar mentioned, it's of course a good extra benefit, but I don't think it's a complete game changer. Maybe in terms of elite athletes and building higher level athletes, it definitely will push them to increase their level and to invest in themselves more. But in terms of participation, I don't think it would make much of a difference. Like what Anwar mentioned, it's already a very popular sport. It's already a sport that's attracting lots of celebrities. So the marketing, the promotion is there. And the Olympics will give it just an extra element and just for the top players, I think, but not for the mass participation.
And my last question before we finish is, because we've got an audience from around the world from the paddle industry, what can people from outside the Middle East, what can they do to support the sport in the Middle East? Is there any opportunities and areas where they can really make a difference, add value to what you guys have already been helping and building in your respective countries? And Najwa, do you want to start with that?
I think more and more, let's say, tournaments happen locally. They're getting more FIP tournaments or international tournaments, maybe to join more of these tournaments that would increase even more the awareness in the country and to show that there is local talent that's here and to come visit, come and play here in the country.
And from your side, Anwar, what can externals
You
help
see,
with?
you see what people from Middle East do usually when they believe that they can improve the level. They go for 1 week or 2 weeks paddle camp in Madrid or in Mallorca or in different places in Spain. I do believe they can come to the Middle East, to Dubai, to Riyadh, to Abu Dhabi, to Doha, because the quality of the infrastructures, you will not find it anywhere in the world. Maybe in Scandinavian with Padel Center with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, he has amazing places. But out of that, honestly, the Middle East has the best venues in the world. And I think in Dubai, we have really beautiful venues, and that's why the competition is important. The competition is important to keep improving the customer service to the client that come, and if you really want to be able to keep charging a price that is satisfied by the client, and satisfied by the club to make sure that it's sustainable, you have to make sure that, yes, you keep providing the best quality court for the client, providing him the best light, the AC when it's indoor. Those are very important. And I think Middle East has that comparing to any other countries.
Well, I think that about wraps up our episode. Again, please like, share, and subscribe if the content was thought-provoking. Please comment on LinkedIn or Twitter if you have any recommendations around our format, topics we need to focus an episode on, questions we should ask, speakers we have to bring on. We want you all, those driving the next phase of the industry's future, to tell us what you want to hear about and who from. So thank you, Ben, for co-piloting the episode, and thank you, Najwa and Anouar, for joining us today. We will keep doing our best to all the angles of the business around paddle, episode after episode. So until the next one, thank you very much.